Okay, you just heard Forever My Queen from the mighty Pentagram. I'm Mark.
And I'm Jason, and welcome to the Requiem Metal Podcast, where we're going to be doing the first of a two-part series on the great Pentagram, who have had a long, luxurious career.
40 years going this year. This is the 40th year.
With few actual kind of recordings, though. That's the oddest thing about the band, is it's a scattered band, and so we can really look at almost 30 years of the band just over the course of really 4 albums. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing.
I mean, basically started in 71 and don't put a record out proper till 85 outside of a couple singles.
Yeah, exactly. And this episode is brought to us by the letter A, our wonderful producer for the show.
Executive producer, Emilia Lombardi. Thank you very much. No website was given, so we'll just give you our eternal thanks.
Yeah, so we greatly appreciate that.
She was actually the one that gave us the idea for the documentary episode.
Yeah, so thank you for that. And had we not recorded the documentary episode prior to getting her executive producing thing, we would have kind of tacked that on. But it would have seemed like really weird, like a weird voiceover edit.
I was thinking about it. I was like, no, that's because we kind of set a precedent how to incorporate it in the show. So thank you very much.
Yeah, so we very, very much appreciate that. But of course, the great Pentagram, hailing from the Maryland, Virginia, Washington, D.C., Baltimore kind of area.
Originally Arlington.
Yeah, okay.
CIA Central, buddy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go. Well, that's Langley. Is that where Langley's at? Is in Arlington?
Is it?
I don't know.
Arlington's a cemetery.
Yeah, I know Langley's
where FBI headquarters is.
Yep.
According to X-Files.
Yeah, and then CIA. I thought CIA was near there too, but maybe.
I think it's all Spook Central area. I'm not sure.
A bunch of creeps down there.
Totally.
And of course, the creeps gave us Bobby Liebling, one of the coolest creeps.
One of the only consistent things about Pentagram, except actually the era, the era that most people are probably familiar with, Relentless on, from 85 on, was kind of a consistent lineup. But the original kind of incarnation was Bobby Liebling and Geof O'Keefe. Yeah. Originally started out as
a guitar player, right?
He was originally a guitar player, and they were kind of, I think they were in kind of a straight up rock band, and we're getting into the whole, Uriah Heep, Sir Lord Baltimore, Blue Cheer, Black Sabbath kind of, getting into that vibe. And eventually, I guess, basically the lineup that we're going to be talking about for this first section, which actually all this stuff is available on the First Daze Here compilation that Relapse put out 2001.
Yeah.
Basically, I think everything, they put a second volume of this thing out as well, too, but it's all 1971 to 76, unreleased. Some of it was released at 7 inches and whatnot, but basically this is the first time anybody in a mass kind of way has ever heard this stuff.
Yeah.
It was 2001, so it was kind of like a watershed.
I think it was like laying around on a lot of bootlegs and poorly recorded things. And so totally. They went in and Relapse sort of remastered all this and did a lot of really nice things with it. And this was kind of a big deal for Relapse. It was kind of something new that they had never done, really, to put some kind of old rock and roll, even though Pentagram is definitely in the metal camp, but it was something more really classic rock, kind of oriented for Relapse. Which
because Relapse did like their underground series with underground death metal and grindcore acts, but this was totally, and this got actually really good response too. Outside of people that don't even know what Relapse really was, really got into this. I mean, my buddy Kevin from he was out in the Bay Area at the time working at a skate shop, and this was like going nonstop. Yeah,
and this was Pentagram's one of those odd bands that because they sort of fell off the radar screen after Be Forewarned in 1994. In a lot of ways, I mean, they've had some albums since then, but they were not very well marketed. They weren't, really put out to the public. That people in my generation, and even to some extent a little bit yours, kind of not missed the boat, but like kind of failed to really appreciate what Pentagram was. And it wasn't until an album like this came out that made us eventually go back and start checking out Relentless and some of the other.
Well, and the first thing I actually got in '93, Peaceful reissued all this stuff.
Okay,
they reissued Day of Reckoning and Relentless, and actually that's when it was titled Relentless. It was originally just a self-titled album, and then they went and did Be Forewarned. I think it was in '94.
Yep.
So that was kind of like the big,
and that was the end of that. Be Forewarned in '94 is the end of the sort of classic '80s, early '90s lineup, the Victor Griffin stuff. But
we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Later. Yeah, exactly. So,
but actually, the era we're talking about right now is Bobby Liebling on vocals, Vincent McAllister on guitar, Greg Main on bass, and Geof O'Keefe on drums.
Yeah, as they switched over. And the tune you heard there, "Forever My Queen," is from '73. Most of the songs that we're going to be playing really start in '73. There aren't. There's one one song from '72, "Lazy Lady," "Lazy Lady," where Liebling's actually still playing guitar on that tune, but we're not playing that one. But
nothing but a 2-bit tramp.
Yeah. And Forever My Queen's kind of one of the more well-known Pentagram songs for, I guess, the people that have been following him since the 70s. It's a song they usually play live, and it really sort of lays out like kind of the template for, I guess, that 70s sound, and really almost the template for what will become the 80s sound. It's just they'll make it a lot heavier. Victor Griffin kind of really dooms things up and blackens things a lot.
Well, I think they kind of stopped doing the whole rock and roll formula. Mm-hmm. Really, I mean, because you listen to these tracks,
but I still think there's a pop hook on some of that stuff. I think songs like "Sign of the Wolf" has a deep sort of vocal hook to it.
Oh, absolutely.
That Liebling never really is able to leave behind. I mean, I think that's ingrained in his nature because of what he grew up on.
Yeah, how different vocally and guitar wise and everything. We'll get into that once we get to the Relentless record. But it's such a kind of a weird shift because you've got all this energy and then all of a sudden just kind of flip a switch and it goes dark and morose.
Yeah, exactly. And
actually, the very first, while we're talking about the origins of it real quick, the very first time I ever heard about, at least in the name dropped, was Cathedral.
Okay.
When they're talking about all the the bands that they're influenced by, and it was just one of those names that you kind of heard in the ether in a lot of interviews and stuff, but you could never find the stuff.
Well, and I remember seeing like advertisements, maybe even in like old Requiem issues, in fact, of like Peaceville ads that had like the cover "Be Forewarned" and stuff. And I always thought for some reason that Pentagram was like in the same league with the Peaceville doom bands, like the My Dying Brides, the Anathemas, Paradise Lost, just because I saw those advertisements together. And then I think it was Grindcore Coon who kind of went through a real big phase where he was studying almost the history of doom, and Pentagram's name sort of popped up here and there throughout that, but we never really had access to it. So whenever those things were released in '93, they never like hit our radar screen. We never really ran into them at record stores or anything.
They were import only.
Yeah, and so I mean, like, it was, I mean, if you missed the boat on Pentagram, you weren't really like locked into that scene when that stuff was put out. Like you could very easily be like I was, where you don't really know who they are until a few years ago.
Yeah, really.
And I had I think it's the Turn the Stone collection that came out because I was getting serviced by Peaceville in the early 2000s for Eclipse, and I think it's Turn to Stone is what it's called, and that was like a greatest hits collection. I remember it had like Dying World on it, and it had a couple like the older tunes and stuff like that. I had a promo of it, and I would listen to that sometimes, but I didn't really like. They were a band I didn't take seriously enough because, again, nobody around us were talking about them.
Yeah, you don't know like how what kind of lineage this band actually had.
And like a band from, other bands from this era that really had a huge influence on us, obviously, we'll talk about Sabbath in a moment, but even like bands that like MC5 and the Stooges and Sonic's Rendezvous Band and stuff that we'll get into later, that was like really being bounced off of us by our manager, Mike, who did the MC5 show with us. And, this is a band that was nowhere on like Mike's radar screen. You know what I mean? So when he's recommending,
they were a local touring band, basically.
So when he was recommending like obscure kind of like late '60s, early '70s rock, like the Groundhogs and stuff, like early stuff. Scorpions and stuff like that, like Lonesome Crow. None of
Sir Lord Baltimore, buddy.
Yeah, Sir Lord Baltimore. Budgie. Uriah Heep, Cream.
Lucifer's Friend.
There's a lot of those sort of things. Yeah, there's even a little bit of Lucifer's Friend on there. Bang. So some of those like kind of classic. Kind of blues rock bands, is definitely where the roots of Pentagram sort of grow out of. But even in a song like Forever My Queen, you can tell that kind of like the way that Tony Iommi interpreted the blues rock kind of stuff. It's just a deeper tone to it. It's darker. It's a more sinister.
But it was blues through the eyes of Europeans, kind of reinvestigating the whole idea.
Yeah. And one of the things lyrically that you'll hear in the next set a little bit, and you hear it in the early stuff, but it really comes to light later. But speaking of the blues, is this whole idea of sort of kind of signing your life away to the devil, or sort of that the devil's the hellhound on my trail, kind of Robert Johnson tune, that. If you live the lifestyle that clearly a guy like Bobby Liebling was living, and we'll get into that more in a second, but that there was always like this doomy darkness presence that was always following a band like this. And Sabbath had that a lot too. I mean, Sabbath would talk about sort of the evil that was always following you.
The looming ominous nature.
Yeah. And that's why they wore all the crosses and stuff, was, the sort of ward off evil and kind of,
it was like superstitious type. I mean, like coming up the song Review Your Choices. I mean, it's all kind of like cautionary tales scales of morality and stuff.
Absolutely. And it's almost like, bands like Pentagram and Black Sabbath, they're like almost the ultimate like Catholic bands in a way. Because they're sort of like, it's this looming guilt of like the doom of apocalypse that's upon humanity.
It's still like kind of the last century kind of version of it as well too, where it wasn't necessarily this huge. Well, of course it was a big organization, Catholicism and everything, but the way it's presented, it's more mythic and it's not quite so like born again Christian kind of values being forced down your throat. It's all this like, it's good and evil, but it's just
rooted in almost like pagan stories. I mean, really, Catholicism, grows out of the sort of Roman culture. It's the Protestants who kind of make everything really like sort of boring and bland when it comes to the sort of the fun kind of Dungeons and Dragon aspects of Christianity, which is
totally Old Testament stuff's fun.
Yeah, and demons with pitchforks and shit like that, chasing you around. So, but they kind of relish in that scene, I guess, and of course, speaking of Bobby Liebling, he like Iggy Pop or like Keith Richards or whatever is sort of a miracle that he sort of survived the whole rock experience, really.
Well, because
this is a guy that
drugs were a constant issue with him. I mean, at one point, he had a 40-year heroin habit.
Yeah,
and at one point, it was $1,000 a day heroin habit, along with crack. Like smoking crack and from all day, not sleeping for 10 days or eating or drinking anything, and then like using a little bit of methadone on the side.
This is like wino kind of stuff, or Lane Staley from Alice in Chains, or just any of those sort of doomy or gloomier kind of vocalist kind of guys, from the American scene.
Well, I can see how Liebling got into it given the era as well, but then like into the 90s, like. Who does heroin anymore?
Yeah, no doubt. Well, once you get past like 96, 97.
Yeah. It's just a weird lifestyle that I've never really gladly I've never associated myself with it, really understood completely.
Yeah. Addiction's addiction. I guess after 40 years, that stuff's in your system in such a way. But
he's 3 years clean.
Yeah. If people like Keith Richards can get clean, I guess anybody can get clean. You know, so.
Well, and Liebling, seen him live we saw him at Maryland Death Fest last year, and that was like the highlight performance of the whole show, basically.
Yeah, and if you ever see pictures of him, he puts on obviously a hell of a show, but he's got this great old 70s mustache. His eyes are sort of always like bulging out. He just looks like he's really in the moment. He's always wearing like glitter, like
gold lame and stuff. It's pretty awesome.
Jumpsuits, or like it's pretty wild. He's a showman.
Oh, and like
sure.
the purple shirt. I don't know if he had the purple shirt on, but he's had that purple shirt. Unless he's got several of them, he's had that thing for like 30 years.
That's a major like impact fashion wise on like the way that like Lee Dorian approaches performance.
Absolutely,
sense, and all the sort of like modern doom rockers come out of the English scene and some of that stuff. It's
yeah, when
even
Cathedral,
the way Bride dresses,
when like Cathedral Aaron started doing this, doing the kind of I guess the ethereal mirror stuff where they started dressing in 70s retro clothing and all that. I always just attributed it to like goofy 70s stuff. I didn't understand the whole backstory of there's this band Pentagram that kind of came out of this, or Sabbath,
even the Sir Lord Baltimores that were influential.
Oh, totally. Everybody's wearing almost like this kind of like British nobleman outfits or something,
like puffy shirts. It's ridiculous. Seinfeld, something pirate kind of gear,
big nice scarves and ascots, and
it's pretty wild, But I guess we turn our attention back to this collection of music that's sort of come out and. Talk about, I guess, some of the musical dynamics that you hear in the early sort of era of Pentagram. You heard, again, some of the templates there. And I think it's unfounded for people to just sort of say that they were a spin-off of Sabbath. I think that's really selling a band like this short. And that's you always hear that in reviews. And it's the easiest starting point is to go to Sabbath. But I hear just as much like dynamic kind of stuff like the Groundhogs did, or even some of the
Blue Cheer is one of the big, Blue Cheer is the band that has gotten shafted for I don't know how long. And
they never get the credit, Summertime Blues was 68, a full almost 2 years before Sabbath put out, Black Sabbath,
totally.
Debut. And
Dickie Peterson, I think he just passed away this last year, but that's one of Bobby Liebling's major influences vocally.
Yeah, and he was a great guitar player as well for Blue Cheer.
Bass player.
Was he?
Yep.
Okay, I thought
I just did some more research as well.
I knew he wrote a bunch of
something
else
stuff
besides just vocals.
Yeah, because they're a power trio.
Okay, yeah, they kind of came off the backs of Cream, another power trio. Yeah.
But yeah, I hear more of his Peterson's kind of vocal influence, but Ozzy's phrasing of things, and it's easy. Any band that's doing kind of like the tune guitar, power chord, Iommi style playing, it's easy to get thrown into that. But I mean, the whole thing became a genre after a certain point, and just the whole idea of music that's not, flower power.
Yep.
At this point was kind of, it was a weird mix of,
and not prog, so it was going against some of that stuff.
It's like blues rock, but you've got that overlooming name of Pentagram, which has the occult aspect, I think, which always pulls people in as well.
Yeah, and when we talk about them like developing through like the late 70s into the early 80s, they almost start to embrace the image of what Pentagram sort of brings with them, and they almost like are like the prototype kind of black metal, death metal sort of dress in terms of like the pentagrams and the leather straps and some of the stuff like Victor Griffin does within wearing like the white makeup and just
Bobby Liebling looks like King Diamond.
Yeah,
at a certain point.
I mean, they were like pre-Fate, pre-Celtic Frost when they were doing a lot of that sort of stuff. So Pentagram just really has gotten like a historical shaft, essentially. They just have never been put into the same light as a lot of.
Well, I think a lot of it is Liebling's burned a hell of a lot of bridges.
Yeah,
and
they're inconsistent in terms of putting music out.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're not really on the radar screen.
Well, and they broke up. The original lineup broke up in '75, I think, for like 6 months because Liebling and his girlfriend got arrested for like drug possession. Gave him one more chance. '76, they put out a couple more tunes and then called it quits.
And they never put a record out.
No,
in the '70s.
No, they have two. They have 2 7-inches out.
Yeah.
Like no sleeves, no nothing. It's just like stamped on it, Pentagram. Like a lazy lady.
Well, and then even they changed their name to Macabre at one point, and they put out the
that's right.
When we talk about Before Warned, the original Before Warned, it was put out as a Macabre, so but it's clearly Pentagram. Yeah, but anyways, it's
like Wicked Angel or something was one of the other names of the band, which Morbid Angel.
Yeah, there you go. But so it's if you're listening to this and you haven't really heard Pentagram before, really haven't heard them in light of like where their historical influence is, don't feel bad because I mean they've done almost everything possible to make that like hard to follow them, But
I mean, now it's pretty easy to get all this stuff, and I think it's nice to start out this way so you actually see where they kind of where their roots are
before they go into the straight heavy metal.
Yeah, because I actually probably listen to this stuff more. This and Relentless, I probably listen to more than any of the later on catalog. Mm-hmm. Which this record has so much energy, and the guitar player, on this one, Vincent McAllister is like just unbelievable. He's not. He's got a lot of emotion to his playing. He's not like a great technical player, but it's really like from the heart stuff. And some of these solos totally like give you like a goosebumps on the back of your neck.
And the song we're going to start off with next, Star Lady, is probably most well known for his solos, and it's probably the best of the early era of Pentagram songs, I think.
And it's a kind of an anomaly song, just how it sounds. And funny story on this one: Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons from Kiss approached Bobby Liebling about buying Star Lady and Hurricane. Another song that's on this record as well.
Hurricane is a great vocal performance, but it's kind of a mellower tune,
But they wanted to buy the songs for $10,000 each, as long as they could, with the caveat that they could take, Liebling's name off them and put, Simmons and Stanley. And they're like, he's like, no. Yeah. So that I don't know if that's true. That's something that's a kind of a story that I've seen 3 or 4 times.
I'm sure Gene Simmons would never admit to a story like that either. Not. And Gene Simmons, speaking of, I kind of point out to Mark that I hear, especially in some of his early stuff, I hear some Gene Simmons kind of vocal influences.
Some of his more rasp and stuff.
Yeah, in terms of the talk singing that he does. So, but Star Lady again, this is a tune to pay attention to for the soloing stuff. And then we've got Review Your Choices, which has been.
I think we recorded about 5 or 6 times on different records.
Well, and I think isn't one of their early 2000s records that they put out called Review Your Choices?
Yeah, I think it's the 02 one or something.
This again goes back to that sort of Fear the Devil theme that Mark and I were sort of talking about, and it's really cool that they really that you heard on Forever My Queen. They're able to sort of integrate the organ pretty in a nice sort of way, and you hear it really well in Review My Choices. Kind of gives it like a very stoner rock, stoner metal kind of vibe to it, more so than even when Sabbath would kind of go the stoner route. Just I think that organ gives it like a warmer tone in a way.
Well, seeing that how these songs could be like reinterpreted so well through different eras, and they're kind of timeless.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that as well, because some of these songs do show up like Review Your Choices in different incarnations and stuff. And then we've got a live tune from a club in Virginia, and I can't remember the name of the club right offhand, but it was recorded live in '74. It's called Living in a Ram's Head, and it's
just ripping. I mean, the guitar tones, it sounds like Death Crush Mayhem guitar tones.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
Punk, essentially, it's got that it's got that nice organic live sound to it. That it's not polished, and that's that's the nice part about this record. And if you're a purist or somebody that likes polished music, you're probably going to be a little bit annoyed with First Daze Here, because it's...
Well, this song in particular is noisy, but it's got so much energy. It's like unbelievable. I love this track.
And so you're not, again, it's a collection that, you're hearing here. This is not like a structured album with thematic, overtones or anything. And I like the guitar solos in particular on Leaving in the Ram's Head. They're kind of slicing kind of moments, like what Priest will later do in the late 70s. And I really get a vibe from the Groundhogs, a really, really underrated British blues rock band.
2 good records.
A couple really good records. Thank Christ for the Bomb, and then the Split records. So good stuff there. And then we've got 2 songs that have actually been re-recorded, and we'll talk a little bit more about those when we come back. $20 Spin and Be Forewarned. So enjoy Star Lady, review your choices, Living in a Ram's Head, and then $20 Spin and Be Forewarned.
I'm going nowhere down the streets instead. village thieves and all the tramps. Somewhere someone left a gap. Look before you leave, my friend. Should God take you in his hand, it's a very small price for your sins you spend. And there's a man with a pitchfork around the bend. Around the bend. and I look around. There is no sound. It's so tranquil. It's so calm like you. But now I hear a noise. Is there any way out of this nightmare? I'm alone now, and you're laughing at me. But I take life in a way that you could never see. So if you're leaving, you better let me know, 'cause I've already started my plan, and I'm never gonna let you go, no, no. Lord, I've lived on the dark side of the moon, and I've been to the heart of the sun. I've gone to bed with many ladies, killed many men, before my 16th year was done. So you be forewarned, 'cause I'm coming after you. When I catch you, Lord, I'm gonna never let you go. Yeah, some say I'm an advocate of Lucifer. Some say I'm a child of God. Yes, they do. Some people think I got the 9 lives of a cat. Others say I'm filthy as a dog, a wretched dog. So you be forewarned, I'll come prowling after you. When I catch you, Lord, I'm gonna never let you go.
Forewarned, $20 spin, living in a ram's head, review your choices, and Star Lady. $20 spin, that's a song that shows up on Relentless near the end of the record.
Yeah, I think it's the only track that comes back from their old catalog
on
this record on Relentless.
And I really like how this version kind of meanders quite a bit. It has a very much kind of early Scorpions, Lonesome Crow kind of feel. And if you're sort of like an 80s Scorpion fan, if you've never actually gone back to their early stuff, I mean, Mark and I have always bantered around doing a show on, that record or that sort of era, which is kind of the unknown Scorpions era. Mm-hmm. Has a very Sabbathy sort of vibe to it, blues rock, almost like a British kind of thing going on. But you hear that in $20 spin, that sort of molten cream, like just music and guitar sort of overflowing, and the lyrics, of course, in $20 spin, like Review Your Choices, have this sort of devil obsessed Robert Johnson vibe to them. Again, it becomes like they're what they're known for almost. I didn't
actually read the lyrics on this one, but I'm guessing it's something about getting a prostitute or a $20 worth of whatever your drug of choice might be.
Kind of, you think that I'm the devil, but I told you I'd be your clown. I couldn't help you if I was Christ himself. You've got your head right under the ground, and you'd like me to get you out of the jam that you got in. I'll tell you flat, don't you look at me. I don't do floating for no $20 spin. Oh, no. So
well, I think Liebling's lyrics are very, even though some of them might be couched in titles of the occult, they're very much just his own life, and they're actually quite kind of revered by people in general. I think that's one of the, even if you don't necessarily get into, or maybe that kind of deepens the whole interest behind the band, is how like personal and kind of autobio all this stuff is about, just kind of pouring his guts out. And it's one of the later on songs we're going to hear, Last Daze Here, actually coming up next, is unbelievable. It's almost like prelude to a suicide kind of song. It's really poignant, really good stuff.
And I know I keep drawing on this name, and for those of you unfamiliar with, I guess, rock history or whatever, a guy like Robert Johnson becomes this sort of legend because supposedly sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads to be able to play guitar the way he did, and a lot of his songs thematically, and becomes almost the thematic kind of element that like a band like the Rolling Stones and other bands that sort of live on the edge and live on the dark side of rock and roll kind of take as their template, is this idea that like, you can do that and that's fine, and you're going to maybe be this amazing band, but it's going to come at a price, and every rock star has had to sort of pay that toll for fame in a way, if they're going to be a legitimate, not necessarily famous rock star, but a legitimate artist, and that as an artist, I mean, that comes as a sacrifice.
Exactly. There's many sacrifices that
you could have sold out a long time ago and been doing like really shitty, like sort of like cut and paste graphic art stuff for some like post like a greeting card company or something like that, making probably good bucks, but you decided to make that sort of life sacrifice, and
you always question it. Exactly.
I mean, and you're not selling your soul to the devil, and there's not like you're not shooting heroin or anything kind of close to that, but anybody who really believes in their craft and is willing to sort of do that stuff is going to make that sort of sacrifice. And Liebling's is this kind of deeper sacrifice because he's playing Russian roulette all the time, with his life, with drugs and women and all these other things.
Well, we'll see how
catch up to him.
They actually just did they signed a deal with Metal Blade last year for 2011. They're supposed to have a record, I think in March. They're supposed to have a new record, so we'll see how it is minus the drugs.
Yeah.
So
Motley Crue kind of got a little shittier clean. Although Dr. Feelgood they were clean on that, so it was like their last good statement. But
I don't know. I think the music's so ingrained in Liebling at this point that I don't necessarily think that he's put out this many good records. I don't think all of a sudden it was just the heroin that was doing.
I hope not.
But actually, going back to, I guess we've got what.
Well, Be Forewarned we need to talk about too, because that's a song that's going to make an appearance later.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And that was what you just heard, and that's much more of a stripped down version of it. Kind of the version you're going to hear a little bit later is
it's like 7 minutes long,
more apocalyptic in a sense.
Yeah,
this is more like a death blues kind of tune.
The later on version is more. It almost borderlines on really good cock rock. Ballad. Or something.
For sure, it has some of those elements, but this is a tune really about being chased by the devil. Be forewarned. It's really about that lifestyle. I've gone to bed with many ladies, killed many a man before my 16th year was done. So you'd be forewarned. I'm coming after you. I'll never let you go. This is the life he leads. It's a life of that most people would not want to live. But it's idolized in a way by rock, fans of rock music.
Idolized from afar, and then when you see the awful,
you can live
reality of it
through some of this. But Liebling's saying, "Hey, I'm wearing this on my sleeves. Literally, I might die for this."
Well, I think he's one of the few kind of like living rock legends that's never made it.
Yeah,
that's never. I mean, he's probably in the same kind of financial dire situations as a lot of us artists that are trying to do things. I mean, he's living in Philadelphia with a young, attractive wife, but. Beyond that, I mean, he's having a hell of a time like making bills and everything else. I mean, it's funny that people probably think he's like living in a pretty decent house, and it's I mean, he loves this music. Obviously, he's made bad life choices with drugs and whatnot, but I think this is kind of what he was put here for.
Well, I think what's cool too is when we saw them live in Maryland, the fans there almost like he's almost like it was a homecoming in a sense to him, to a lot of people, and a lot of the people there, I was surprised how many people knew like almost every lyric to like all the songs and were singing along.
Young kids too.
That was a shocker to me because again, I'm new in a sense to this whole like phenomena of Pentagram and what they've really meant to music, and to see that many people who were like obviously locked in and knew what they were was really cool. And it gives you a sense that hey, you know, this guy might not have really made it, but he's clearly, whatever he's done has had this you know major impact on people, you know, who have gotten him, you know.
And he's managed to keep that kind of image going, that the same image he's had for, you know, 35, 40 years.
Yeah, that sort of hard luck kind of guy. And speaking of hard luck, you know, Last Daze Here, which is the last tune we're going to play from First Daze Here. So kind of a play
DAZE for the album.
Yep. And you mentioned that, you know, the suicidal tone, this sort of like it's like a goodbye story.
It's almost like a suicide note, almost, is how it comes across to me, at least. It's just really, especially the vocal stuff that's happening too. It's that's the thing that's pretty amazing about this, you know, this collection, is how the variation of vocals that he does on this, and the kind of power and like really kind of dirty blues stuff he's doing as well, and Iggy Popish isms and whatnot.
A lot of Stooges in this
that
song.
Never resurfaces to this degree on any other record.
No, and I think it's partially because of the musicians that he was around too. I think
in the era and everything.
When he brings a guy like Victor Griffin in on Relentless, which we'll talk about in a moment here, I mean, Victor Griffin's clearly coming out of a different realm. You know, he's I think he was like 17 or something when he first hooked up with
actually, Victor Griffin pulled in Liebling.
Yeah, we'll talk about that, Death Row and all that kind of stuff. But especially on this song, before we move on to talking about Relentless, you know, Mark mentioned the Stooges, and definitely has that sort of apocalyptic beauty that, like, you know, Iggy had on songs like you know, off of Raw Power, you know, songs like Search and Destroy and things like that like,
especially the live performances that he did a lot more of the kind of going off the deep end stuff.
Yeah, and then another band, speaking of a band that doesn't get, you know, enough credit for being brilliant, partially like Pentagram in the 70s, because they never really put out official records, with Sonic's Rendezvous Band with Fred Sonic Smith from MC5. And you know, there's been some box sets put out in the last 10 years or so that have collections of a lot of their live shows and different things.
Well, they've only put out a single.
Yeah, City Slang, and that's a tune that you know, really is a good starting point in terms of emotive, beautiful songs vocally, and also guitar playing wise, where it's not technical, but it captures this
honesty.
Yeah, it's
like blue collar.
It's like cut your veins, you know, pour your heart out kind of stuff. That's makes up, you know, not having the flashy techniques with instead of pouring that emotive quality.
Well, that's the stuff that in the long run for me is more worthwhile, I think, and I think will hold up
the
longer.
Anti-prog, you know, in
exactly.
A sense, it's not cold and emotionless, you know. So
and those are like, I mean, I think Pentagram and, you know, probably to a greater extent, Sonic's Rendezvous are one of those bands that it's almost like one of those things you dream of finding. This band's like, why have I never heard of this band before? Yeah. They're this prolific, and you know.
And down the road, I'm sure when we hook up with Mike, we'll do a feature on Sonic's Rendezvous and some of that lost sort of Detroit stuff of the 70s. But so anyways, we got Last Daze Here that will sort of start the set, and then we're gonna get into some Relentless stuff, and I guess we can introduce the record really quick and kind of talk about, you know, what's going on with it, but then we'll kind of come back and talk more specifically about the songs you're going to hear. But the lineup, or I guess give us the backstory.
Well, I guess I think it's 1980, although the dates are kind of, you know, given the situation, I'm not exactly sure on all the dates, but I believe it's like 80 or 81. Victor Griffin puts together Death Row, which is basically you know, his band from the get-go.
And he pulls in Martin Sweeney on bass and Joe Hasselvander, right, on drums.
I don't think it was Hasselvander originally. I don't think originally. I think he came in a little bit later. So basically he pulls in Liebling to do vocals on it. It's not a Pentagram record. They end up, you know, recording stuff for a couple years, and then I've heard different things. It's either by fan demand, or maybe they just did it because, okay, Pentagram was a recognized name. Let's kind of bring it back again.
Plus, it fit the style of music almost better than Pentagram did in the 70s. You know?
Although it is completely different too. Yeah. It could be a totally different band. That's why I think it's kind of interesting to hear this old stuff and then see what they actually did on Relentless. When actually from what I can gather, most of the songs were actually recorded as the All Your Sins Shin's demo for Death Row.
Okay.
And then they just ended up changing everything.
Well, here on this picture that they have, it says Pentagram 1982. So it looks like if they did form Death Row in 80, by 82 they had made the decision to maybe go with the Pentagram name if this CD is accurate. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So yeah, because it says Pentagram by 82, and so by 82 now they've added Joe Hasselvander on drums, and so yeah.
Well, and they put this thing out themselves in 85.
It was a self-release thing. It was actually released on Pentagram Records, wasn't it? Or something like really bizarre like that?
I think it was just Pentagram Records. They only did 1,000 copies.
Yeah. And it had a different track order than what Relentless is as well. So
the same tracks, but just put in different order. It actually starts out with the Relentless.
Yeah, it starts out with the title track and stuff. But it's definitely, this is from the last set that we played, this is a much different feeling to the songs, and this is a Hall of Fame record in decibel, actually, so they finally are starting to get that recognition. And one of the things I guess I'll say is, here you get to see a lot more of a vocal push in a way towards the style that Liebling's going to still use today. This is where like Liebling almost kind of comes into his own and picks the style that he's going to sort of work with from this point on.
Yep.
And in terms of music, it's obviously coming out of the Sabbath kind of school a little even more than what you heard on the 70s stuff. But what I like about Pentagram is they're sort of like less subtle than Sabbath. They're much more bludgeoning and kind of like sledgehammer, like they just kind of hit you with a riff, and they're not.
It's not playing
around with stuff.
It's really stripped down. There's not. I mean, the solos aren't really there like they were in the previous stuff that you heard at all.
Yeah.
And it's almost like kind of pretty much the template for what you hear in like Cathedral and Electric Wizard and a lot of the stuff later on that kind of adopts the whole Doom vibe.
And in particular, this record, the production is so raw because it's like a demo quality, but I think it almost works for this record. I think this record, if it sounded slick, would not be good at all.
No.
And so it sort of works that it's like this like self-produced kind of weird sound. But we've got after Last Daze Here in the 70s, we jump forward to the 85 with Dying World, Relentless, and The Ghoul. And we'll talk a little bit more about those songs and the songs we're going to end with when we come back.
And these are gonna be some of my last days here. I'm wasting away and time's too dear. Somebody hold me, I'm afraid. But I'll be a chicken for a place to be safe. It's been too long and I've seen your face. It's been too long since I had a place. You never seem to see until you had my heart. I'm drifting by, baby, just torn apart. Somebody stay near, this time it's for real. I'm just what you made me, baby. I never heal. And it's been too long since I seen your pretty face.
It's been a little bit too long since I seen no pretty babe. Been too long since I hold you in my arms. 'Cause baby, I feel so cold.
sinister tales. Why do you hold your head so low? Are you afraid of your mystical soul? Feel the metal and feel it deep. Out from the walls, flow true belief. When in doubt, what do? You know how to see it through. Never in your life will he forgive the wasting of your soul that he once gave. Oh no! If you do, but you'll be surprised if I told it to you. My looks are deceiving, I'm not what I seem. Oh, I got more power than you may believe. Oh, take me. shall forever be. But I must sleep before the dawn, and then my work will carry on. Once you've come to grips with me, a fool I know you'll always be. 'Cause I'm not the living. You soon will be given.
That was The Ghoul, Relentless, Dying World, and then Last Daze Here. And I guess in terms of, Dying World, Relentless, and The Ghoul, anything you kind of want to point out musically, besides some of the thematic stuff that we've already talked about with Relentless, or
the track Relentless is one riff the entire song.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the textbook definition of simplified compared to what they did before.
And speak, we were talking about this before, and you hear it in Relentless. It seems like the go-to Sabbath riff that they sort of draw upon is Into the Void. The Into the Void sort of slowed down, sort of chug. Rocket engines burning fuel so fast. That sort of like chug, and you hear it in a tune like Relentless. You hear it in The Ghoul, and The Ghoul has some really awesome harmonic qualities working towards it that are really, really cool.
It's one of my favorite vocal performances of his on the record.
Yep. And then Dying World is just kind of a pretty dynamic tune. That's actually the song I was most familiar with from Pentagram for some odd reason. It was like the song I always pulled off and put on like mixed CDs for people.
Okay.
When I put together that whole like 20 CD history of heavy metal for our buddy Luke, that was the Pentagram song I picked for it. And so I don't know why, it was just, I think it was
a sign of a wolf guy.
It was off that Turn to the Stone though. I think that's why it was just like it was like the opening song I think of it. And so I just would grab that song because I don't think
I ever had that comp.
Yeah. I don't know. It was when I got service from Peaceville back in the
I had Cast in Stone by Venom at that time.
Yeah, did you? Nice.
not a good record.
Yeah, no, I remember having that when we went and saw Venom at the Metal Fest. So I think they signed my Cast in Stone.
They signed mine, what was it, Eine kleine Nachtmusik live record. Yes.
That's pretty cool. It's a nice little keeper. But I guess we should talk about the song we're going to end things with, which is a much more dynamic tune, and a tune that's probably ultimately, for Mark and I, maybe our favorite, go-to Pentagram song. It's the eponymous Sign of the Wolf Pentagram.
Yes.
And this is a song that when they played in Maryland, that was kind of like the biggest hit, I guess.
Well, I think it's just got...
It's about like turning into a werewolf, essentially.
It's... Let me find the lyrics real quick here. But it's got like this weird street kind of quality to it, is too, because you hear like the
really
shotgun
raw.
blast rings out in the. Let me find the shotgun blast as he runs in the wind. But you just can't win. It's the pentagram. It's almost like the pentagram is just like another term for evil, or
like the devil that's on the hell no my trail.
Yeah, black cloud hanging, it just won't leave.
Yeah,
though he tries to believe it's the pentagram.
Yeah,
it's such a like simple but fantastic song.
And the guitar solo, it's probably my favorite guitar solo on the record. This and Sinister, which we'll be hearing in part 2, and it's so simple. I mean, it's almost like an East Frehley type solo. You know, it's just following like the vocal lines and the melody. You know, and stuff. So, and it's a gut punch, and it's a cool way to sort of end things. And you'll probably want to rewind it and listen to it 4 or 5 times in a row, I would imagine.
Yeah, I would just go out and buy this.
Yeah,
this whole record.
No doubt.
And actually, you can get the First Daze Here thing dirt cheap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazon Marketplace, something like $3.
Well, we're not done with Pentagram or Relentless for that matter, and so we're going to kind of end things with Sign of the Wolf here, and then when we pick up part 2, which you'll hear next week, we'll pick up with some more Relentless tunes. But we want to thank our executive producer again, Miss
Emilia Lombardi. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe related to the great Vince Lombardi, Green Bay Packers coach.
Never know.
Go Packers! By the time you hear this, it'll be after the playoff game on Saturday. But Packers and the Bears, see who goes to the Super Bowl. But anyways, yeah, let us know what you thought. If this old Pentagram stuff was new to you, send us your thoughts. See if you like us doing some of this older stuff, because it's the oldest records we've done besides the MC5 and maybe the early Priest stuff.
Maybe one song off the early Priest.
Yeah, we haven't really gone back this far, and it's something we're definitely interested in. We've actually had a lot of requests to do some more non-metal rock and roll kind of stuff.
I mean, I'd be into doing a whole Sir Lord Baltimore show.
Yeah, sure. Groundhogs. That's a big one for me as well. But yeah, I mean, so. But one thing I'll say before we take off about Relentless is this too, when it's put out in '85, this really becomes a contemporary of sort of the up and coming doom scene with the Troubles, the St. Vituses, and the Witchfinder Generals, and predates Candlemass. Candlemass comes out in '86, but so Pentagram, right with this record and right with the sounds you just heard.
Celtic Frost is coming out this time.
It kind of puts itself right in the mix of all that kind of stuff. So
although not penetrating too deeply, because it only had like 1,000 copies.
Exactly. But let us know what you thought. Send us an email at requiempodcast@gmail.com. Drop us a line on iTunes. We appreciate the comments and things.
If you'd like to become an executive producer, which basically what is becoming executive producer? Whoever donates the most amount of money to us each week is the executive producer, because that's what executive producers do, help fund the show. Absolutely. So just go to requiempodcast.com, click on the link, become an executive producer.
Yeah, and there on requiempodcast.com you can check out some merch and things like that. We got coffee cups and t-shirts and all that kind of good stuff. And check us out on Facebook. We get a lot of feedback there as well. So, but we're gonna end things here. We'll be back next week with a little bit more Pentagram. So enjoy Sign of the Wolf, Pentagram. I'm Jason.
And I'm Mark.